Why stories are probably not as important as you think in Dungeons and Dragons today on a Gamer's Guide to Life. Hey, quick reminder, I'm Bill Knauer, award-winning game writer, author, and creativity coach. And if you like Gamer's Guide to Life, then hit like and subscribe. You know why? It helps. That's right. Okay, back to the show. So there's three main challenges with stories in Dungeons and Dragons in my experience. The first one is that by and large, the problem that the characters are trying to solve in the story, and by the way, all stories need problems. That is fundamental to storytelling. Without a problem, without a challenge, there's no story. You're not going to watch a movie about a guy who gets up and has a perfect day, one day after another, who's never bored of his perfect day, who loves his wife and loves his kid and loves his job and makes plenty of money and never gets sick. You're not going to watch that story. And you're not going to want to be a D&D player if there's no monsters to kill, if there's no orcs threatening the village, if there's not some evil wizard trying to control the world. No, we need problems. Unfortunately, a lot of times the problems the characters are solving are someone else's problem. Go get this sword for me, they're told by this nobleman. An old man tells them to go fetch a magic cup. They have to rescue someone. The quest that they're going on is almost always someone else's problem that they need the players to solve. Now, in a movie, like, say, Lord of the Rings, or a story or book like Lord of the Rings, the characters will be sent on a quest, but somewhere in that quest, they will learn something about themselves. It's not about the thing they're trying to do, but the thing they're trying to overcome in themselves. But it's tougher to do in D&D. And the model of someone powerful asking the players to do something for them is very common. In fact, the two adventures I published in Dungeon Magazine years ago both followed this model. They followed it in part because I noticed that that's what the kind of adventures they were publishing, and I was familiar with them. The first adventure, the players find this necklace that is a kind of wedding necklace, and it's been stolen, or they find it in this dungeon that they were exploring. Turns out the son had been kidnapped by some bandits, and they have to go rescue him for the prince. I think he was related to the nobleman in the city. So they had to rescue the prince. Second adventure, one I quite like. They had to be disguised as Durgar to go into the Underdark and retrieve this magic amulet, because if they didn't, a war would be fought between two nations. The amulet was meant to bring peace between these two nations. So both fine stories, both good quests, but in both cases, the son that they're rescuing and the war they're trying to avoid really aren't the character's problem. It's not their problem that there's going to be a war. They can go somewhere else. In real life, they might care, but in the world of D&D, which is not real life, they probably wouldn't care. Now, you can run these adventures and still have fun, but ideally, the problem that is being solved is the characters. Because, along the way, the characters are going to meet different obstacles, like, say, a troll trying to crack their head open. Now, that's their problem. And you can feel, as a DM, and I can feel the difference between the energy the players at the table, when the players are the lives of the characters are at risk because of some monster they're fighting or some trap they're trying to avoid, and the energy at the table when they're being given a quest. They're not as excited by the quest as they are by trying to overcome that monster. And it's okay. It's okay if you don't have the time to come up with a story that directly affects the players. It's okay just to give them a quest, because they're still going to have fun. They're still going to have fun because they like to play D&D. But man, I felt the difference. I felt the difference between the players rescuing someone that they've been asked to rescue and the time the players' goblin. My party had this goblin who was a little sidekick who they had found in this dungeon, who had to sort of attach themselves to him. And they tried to shoo him away, but he'd stayed with them. And so, even though they didn't trust him, at first they came to trust him. And my brother played him as a sidekick, and I would play that character, and we would have little back and forths, and there'd be jokes, and he became like their mascot. And I saw the difference when they went into town once, and they had this magic book, and there was this organized crime ring in town who wanted that book or had been hired to get that book from them. And so, what happened? One day they're in town buying and selling and buying and selling, and then they look up, they're at an inn, and they say, "Hey, where's our goblin?" I think his name was Ghibli. Was that his name? I don't remember now. Where is that goblin? Oh, I don't know. And then, whoop, what do they look at? A message comes. It's a little box. And on the message, it says, we want that book or the goblin dies. And they open up the box and it's the goblin's ear. Oh my God, this organized crime ring has stolen their goblin, cut off his ear, threatening, and oh boy, they were not going to give him that book. They were going to go rescue him. So here was a rescue mission. And I still remember the evening of the adventure when they were going to rescue the goblin. My friend Gorham said, "Oh, we were planning this. We were planning this rescue. There may have been spreadsheets involved. We all had a good laugh." And I thought to myself, this is the secret sauce. The players want that goblin rescued. That's their problem. It's not about the book, it's their problem. Oh, now that's what I'm looking for. So it's not about games can't be fun with quests, but they're better when the quest comes from the player. So that's the first problem, first challenge. The stories are too often someone else's problem the characters are solving. The second is much more just very practical. It's mundane, but it's worth noting. Stories in D&D, in the game Dungeons and Dragons, really, in my experience, can't be simple enough. They just can't be. And I want to, before I launch into this, understand that I play at this point in my life and have been for several years every week with a group of guys who I've been playing with for 50 years almost, for some of them. And these are people who read, who love stories. One of them's a screenwriter, successful screenwriter and playwright, now a novelist. Another one's a federal judge. These are people who know how to tell stories. My brother, he's a great storyteller. I mention that because even though they have this lifelong relationship to stories, some of them professional storytellers, if I say to them, look, or if their characters are told, you have to go to the temple of eternal suffering and retrieve the sword of light. I can see them go, okay, yeah, temple of eternal suffering, retrieve the sword of light. But if I say, because you need that sword to defeat the necromancer Amon Ra, who is trying to gain control of the heart of darkness, which will give him access to powers of another realm, I've lost them. I've lost them as soon as I say because. Is it because they're dumb and they don't understand stories? No. It's because they're busy and because they're not thinking about the game all week long like I am. They can't remember. Maybe they take notes. Probably they don't. If they don't know what they're getting or why, right? If they can't remember why they're trying to get something, what good is this story? Oh my God. And I cannot believe how simple the story needs to be sometimes. I mean, I was playing the first adventure in Dragonbane. That's what we're using now. It's this new game called Dragonbane. I really like it. And it came with a module, and I decided to use the module, which I rarely do, but I wanted to learn how to play the game. And it was a pretty simple story. You had to get these four pieces of the statue, which you would use to get this sword, which you would use to kill this guy. And man, for the first month or two of adventuring, every other game, someone would say, wait, what are we doing? Why are we here? What are we looking for? Oh, right, the statue, the statue, the statue. Okay, we're looking for the statue. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't want to adventure. It's because being told what to do is harder to remember than when you decide what to do, which I'll get to more in a moment. So we got to keep it simple. And often when we create our stories, they're way too complex. So you got to keep it simple. There's a third factor, and that is maybe a little controversial, but I think it's so not the most important part of the game. In fact, I think story is only about 10 to 20% of the game. But before I get into that, a quick caveat. This is based on my experience of the game, how I play it, which I think is how a lot of people play it, based on, I don't know, YouTube and just casual conversations with people. But I think it is. But still, I know there's different ways to play it. For instance, my good friend Chris, his daughter Addie, when she was in high school, decided to run a game for the first time. So she gathered up her friends who were all imaginative reader types, you know. They would be, she thought, be up for a game of D&D. They'd all heard about it. And she started running them. Of course, she started them in the inn, the tavern. That's where the adventure started. And to her surprise, she couldn't get them out of the inn. Why? Because they were having a grand old time just sitting around talking to each other in character. That wouldn't be a game I'd want to play, but they were liking it. And if they're having fun, you know, no harm done, right? But it's not the game for me, but it was for them. Likewise, my brother shared a house with this guy about 20 years ago. The guy was really into D&D. He was pretty serious about it. And he explained to my brother that when they played, everybody was expected to show up to the table in full costume. And then on top of that, he was describing how he had the next session, he was going to be giving some kind of speech. And he was preparing the speech, he was memorizing the speech, he was practicing the speech. This was really like close to theater. All well and good, not the kind of thing I do. And not the kind of thing most people do, I think. So bear that in mind. The next bit of advice may not apply to your game. But again, in my experience, story does play a role in the game, but it's not the most important. The most important part of the game, where I actually spend most of the time when I'm playing, is in exploration, imagination, cooperation, and non-competitive problem solving. That's adventuring. And story is really there as a kind of structure to that. You know, cooperation, problem solving, exploration, imagination, that is where you spend your time, where you have the most fun, and also where your actions have the greatest impact. A lot of times the stories, the players didn't create the stories. They happened in spite of the characters. But that group of goblins that you're attacking, if you kill them all, that happened because of your actions. The story may be resolved because of the players, but a lot of the story itself is not a result of the character's choices. But the exploration, that is the character's choices. The problem solving, that's the character's choices. And most of the fun is had doing that, playing the game, really. That's the game. The rolling the dice, making decisions. But we need that story just to give it some kind of focus. Because I've played it without the focus of some kind of story, and it's just not the same. It's a little better when there's a reason you're going down in the dungeon. For the most part, for just one night, if someone said, Bill, we're going to roll up a character, and you're just going to go down in a dungeon. I'm not going to tell you why we're going down the dungeon. You're going down the dungeon because that's what we're going to do tonight. I'd be okay with that for a night, maybe two. But I think, given my long experience with this game, I would need some kind of a story for 4 or 5 adventures, for a campaign. So what do we do? How do we help these stories be a more useful part of the game? A more fun part of the game. A more fun part of the game. Well, there's no silver bullet, but I think there's a couple things I would suggest. First of all, you can make the story part of the character's problem by making the problem that is the story affect them directly. For instance, classic one that works is giving the characters a powerful magic item that other people want. The first time I ever wrote a story, this is what I did. I was 15. All our adventures had really not been story related. And I thought, no, I want this to really feel like a novel. So I based on my favorite novel at that time, which was Lord of the Rings. So instead of giving them a ring, I gave them an orb. And it was their orb. They had found it. They owned it. Everybody wanted it. It was powerful. They didn't know what it was. They knew it could do something. They knew that there was this evil wizard named Devron who wanted it, and God knows what he would do with it, but they could guess, control the world, because that's what evil wizards did. But you see, because it belonged to them, and this is the nature of, I think, this is human nature, really. If the powerful magic item belongs to the characters, then the players don't want to give it up. Why? Because it's theirs. It doesn't matter if they just found it lying on the road. Now it's theirs. They don't want to give it up. And so in the example I gave earlier, where they had this book, they had found the book. Someone said, give it to her, give it to us or else. We're not going to give it up. It's their book. It's their book. We don't want to give you that, on top of which they'd stolen their friend and cut off his ear, but also it's their book. So that gets the characters and the players directly involved in the problem. If they own the powerful magic item, then all the action is swirling around them, you see. And they're central to, and they don't want to give it up. Oh, it's theirs, it's power. It doesn't matter if they don't know what to do with it, it's still theirs. So that's one thing you can do. The other is do things like give like dead magic zone. So maybe there's something going on. There's some evil demon is up to no good, and part of the consequence of his actions is creating dead magic zones. Well, the players like to use their magic, and if they keep running into these dead magic zones where they can't use their magic, that's going to bug them. That's going to piss them off. And so now they're going to want to find, probably, the thing responsible for these dead magic zones because it makes them less powerful, and that will piss off your players. They want to be as powerful as possible. And if you do something that makes them a little less powerful, they're going to want to stop that. So now the world's problem is also their problem. Yeah. Or you could do, I'm experimenting with this now, you could do like a zombie apocalypse type situation where they're in a little town and the zombies are wandering outside the little town. So every time they try to leave the walls of the city, they have to dodge past these zombies who can, unlike D&D zombies, bite them and turn them into zombies too. Or, maybe if they miss enough saving throws. So now just trying to go on an adventure means they have to negotiate this horde, this wandering horde of undead. That can get annoying. That makes their life more difficult. Maybe they'd like to solve that problem. Of course, the town wants the zombies to go away. The world wants the zombies to go away, but maybe they do too. So that's another example. And another one I heard recently, which I thought was quite good, is if you had, say, a mine of ore mine, and and some goblins had invaded the ore mine. Now, they might be asked to go clear the goblins out of the mine, but if the goblins are in the mine, there's no ore coming out of it. Therefore, items made out of steel, armor, and weapons, for instance, are going to be double or triple price. And if you're playing in a world like, say, Dragonbane, or Shadow Dark, where the players don't start with all this equipment and where treasure and money is a bit scarcer, and you actually have to buy more stuff to level up, to power up, which you do in Dragonbane, you do in games like Shadow Dark, then having things cost 2 and 3 times more, that's annoying to the characters, annoying to the player. And so now the problem, the world's problem, goblins in the mine, is also their problem. So again, try to make it their problem. There's 3 examples. I'm sure there's more where that came from. And also remember that if someone is telling the players what to do, you need to keep it simple. You'll need to keep it simple. One thing at a time. Don't tell them to do 4 things. Tell them one thing. They can probably hold on to that. Ideally, if the players choose to get something or kill someone, they're more likely to remember the idea if it was their idea. So, for instance, let's say you're 5th level, and you notice that a lot of them, this is, let's say, 5e you're playing, and you notice that a bunch of the monsters that you're encountering, or some of the monsters you're encountering, don't take full damage from normal weapons. You need a magic sword or a magic axe or a sword or dagger or bow, something magical to do full damage. You want to do full damage. You don't have a magic weapon. You, the character, make a note, or the player make a note, I want a magic sword. You have essentially put yourself on a quest for a magic sword. You're not going to forget that. You're not going to forget that. And so but if someone tells you, I need you to get this magic sword, that you have to remember. You don't need to remember that you need a magic sword. Likewise, I remember I was playing a game where one of the characters died. I was playing Shadow Dark, and one of the characters died, and my players were used to playing in versions of D&D where there was always resurrection, but in Shadow Dark there is not. And so they said, well, we're going to resurrect him. And I said, well, there's no resurrection spell in the cleric's lift. They said, well, there must be a way. We're going to try and find it. And I said, well, do you want to try and find it? And they said, yes. And so they sent themselves on a quest to find out how to resurrect the character that had died. That became the second half of their campaign, their idea. They didn't need reminding, for the most part, of what they were trying to do. Another example of the players deciding what to do, or the players going on a kind of quest for themselves, was when I had them in something called the Fallen Lands. There was this castle, and it was owned by this greater lord, but he wanted someone to oversee these lands. And he said, the first person who can give me 50,000 gold gets to have that castle and become lords of this land. And so the player said, oh, that's interesting to us. We'd like to go try to find 50,000 gold pieces to see if we can become lords. The quest was really simple. Go get 50,000 gold, come back, have the castle, become lords. try to make the adventure come from them if you can. And if you can't have it come from them, give it to them in small doses, one thing at a time that they might remember. Because remember, if they don't remember what the story is, it's not really doing any work. And lastly, remember that story is just not the best part of the adventure. Usually, the best parts of the adventure are the parts you can't plan, the parts that happen spontaneously, the parts that, you know, the die roll that comes through when it saves the character from falling off the cliff, the inspired idea of how to handle the dragon. Really, the magic happens in the game itself, the stuff you can't plan. So lean on that. Lean on that. So there you go. Story, maybe not quite as important as we think. It's there to give a focus, but try to make it central to the characters. Try to make it central to the characters, and everyone will have more fun. And that's the goal. Yes, it is. Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you like it, subscribe. And if you want to, leave me a note, I'm happy to reply to them. So till next time, this is Bill Knauer. Keep rolling dice. Keep having fun. Hey, look at that. You made it all the way to the end. I'm really proud of you. You know what you can do? Hit like and subscribe. Yeah, that's something you can do, and it'll be awesome. All right, now, this is really the end.